If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Seneca wrote that nearly 2,000 years ago, and the truth of it still slices through modern life. Women, whether they consciously understand it or not, are incredibly perceptive to a man's direction, energy, and emotional structure. Attraction isn't just about looks. It's not about having money or muscles. It's about who you are when no one's watching. And it's also about the things you unknowingly do that kill attraction. In this video, we're going deep into the 7 biggest things that make women lose interest in a man. These are not opinions, they are patterns. So watch until the very end, because missing just one of these could be the difference between her being magnetized by you or walking away without a second thought. Like, comment your experience, subscribe, and share if you've seen any of this play out in your own life. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Lack of control, being too passive. A man who has no control over his life is a man who has already lost before the game even begins. He's not in the driver's seat, he's not even holding the map. Women don't want to babysit their partners. They don't want to be the only one setting the pace, making the decisions, or planning the future. When you're passive, when you hesitate too much, or when you constantly defer to her instead of stepping up, you're not being kind or chill. You're becoming dead weight. You're shifting the responsibility of direction onto her shoulders, and that silently tells her you're on your own. It's a dangerous mistake to believe that being passive is the same as being respectful. Being too agreeable, too conflict avoidant, or too unsure of yourself doesn't make you easy to be around. It makes you forgettable. It triggers something primal in a woman's subconscious that says, "This man cannot protect me. He won't step up when it matters. I'm not safe here." It's not just about physical strength. It's about presence, decisiveness, and emotional security. If you can't handle your own life, why should she believe you can handle hers when things get hard? Stoicism is about control, not of others, but of the self. A Stoic man doesn't rely on external validation to feel grounded. He doesn't ask, "What should I do?" 100 times a day. He watches, reflects, decides, and then accepts whatever comes. Even in failure, he holds his ground. And that right there, that ability to act with courage and stand by his choice, is what draws people in. It's magnetic because it's so rare. Passivity, on the other hand, is like a thick fog. It dulls everything, your energy, your identity, your presence. It turns you into a ghost in your own relationship. And here's the kicker, a woman can't truly relax with a passive man. She may tolerate it for a while, she might even try to make it work, but inside, there's tension. Because deep down, she knows if the pressure hits, she'll have to be the one to hold the structure together. She'll have to lead both of you. And no matter how nurturing or independent a woman is, that kind of emotional labor wears down attraction fast. This isn't about being domineering. It's not about barking orders or needing to control every detail. It's about having a spine, a direction, a mission that matters more than temporary comfort. It's about having preferences and the courage to stand by them. A man who can't choose a restaurant, a movie, or a plan for the weekend doesn't come off as cute or considerate, he comes off as exhausting. No one wants to carry someone who's afraid to speak up for himself. Women want to feel like their man has it together. He might not have all the answers, but he moves with purpose. He doesn't get lost in doubt every time a decision has to be made. He doesn't hand the wheel over and expect someone else to do the driving for him. If you're always shrugging, stalling, or playing it safe so you don't mess up, you're not protecting the relationship, you're slowly killing the spark that keeps it alive. A man without direction becomes invisible. Not just to women, but to the world. Because there's nothing more forgettable than a man who doesn't even know what he wants. People follow clarity, not confusion. They're drawn to someone who has vision, even if it's imperfect. You don't need to be flawless, you need to be present, decisive, and committed to your path. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes her feel safe. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Chapter 2. Emotional vomiting, not real vulnerability. There's a dangerous misconception today that says men need to be more open, more vulnerable, more emotional. And there's truth to that, but only when it's done with clarity, with discipline, and above all, with strength. What most men do instead is emotional vomiting. They spill every insecurity, every unresolved trauma, every frustration like a leaking bucket. There's no filter, no timing, no awareness of the impact. They think they're being real, but what they're really doing is unloading emotional baggage onto someone who didn't ask for it. There's a massive difference between being vulnerable and being emotionally reckless. Vulnerability is not about bleeding in front of everyone and calling it honesty. It's about standing in your truth with control. Women do not want to be your emotional sponge. They are not your therapist. They want a partner, not a patient. Vulnerability becomes powerful only when it's expressed from a place of ownership. When you can say, "This is what I've been through. This is what I've learned. This is how I've chosen to grow from it." That is strength. That is real masculinity. But when you start breaking down because your boss didn't say good morning, or spiral into a victim monologue about how your ex ruined your life 5 years ago, you're not being brave. You're being unstable. And instability repels women more than anything. It makes them feel unsafe. Because deep down, she's wondering, if he can't handle himself, how the hell is he going to handle me, or life? The emotional mess doesn't bring closeness. It brings caution. She stops trusting your frame. She starts walking on eggshells. And eventually, she checks out. Stoicism teaches us to process emotions, not suppress them. There's a massive difference between bottling things up and mastering them. Stoic men feel pain. They just don't let pain dictate their behavior. They observe it, understand it, and choose their response carefully. They don't deny what's inside, but they don't drown other people in it either. They understand that expressing emotion must be rooted in timing, precision, and purpose. Emotional chaos is not attractive. It's unsettling. You might think she'll appreciate the honesty, the rawness, the realness, but what she's actually feeling is doubt. She's not judging you for feeling things, she's judging your inability to handle those feelings with maturity. A woman might comfort you the first time. She might say the right words. But deep inside, her instincts are already kicking in. She's asking herself, is this a man I can lean on? Or is he going to collapse when things get hard? If she feels like she has to manage your emotional state, she stops feeling feminine around you. She becomes your caretaker. Your stability becomes her job. And the polarity dies right there. Because women aren't turned on by emotional helplessness, they're drawn to emotional presence. And presence means, I feel this, I acknowledge this, but I'm still centered. I'm still here. A stoic man doesn't pretend he's bulletproof. He simply doesn't fall apart publicly unless there's deep trust and context. And even then, he leads with responsibility, not raw panic. He says, I'm going through something, and here's what I'm doing about it. That signals maturity. That creates trust. That makes her feel like she's with a man, not a boy in a man's body begging for comfort. So be honest with your emotions. But don't use her as your dumping ground. Show her that you're in charge of your inner world, even when it hurts. Show her that you don't need constant reassurance, because you built a core that doesn't shatter under pressure. When you do that, your vulnerability becomes powerful, not pitiful. And women respect power far more than emotional mess. Chapter 3. Clingy and needy behavior. When a man becomes emotionally dependent on a woman, the attraction starts to rot from the inside out. Constant texting, checking where she is, needing reassurance, trying to be in contact every hour. These are behaviors rooted in fear, not love. They don't make her feel special. They make her feel trapped, suffocated, like you have nothing going on outside of her. And that's not flattering. It's frightening, because it signals that you've built your emotional stability on someone else's presence, and that's not love, it's emotional debt. No one wants to be the only thing standing between you and collapse. That's not romantic. It's a responsibility she didn't ask for. The more emotionally clingy you are, the more she feels like she has to manage you. And the moment she feels like your emotional babysitter, the desire starts to die. Quietly, but inevitably. The more available you are, the more she takes you for granted. It's a paradox, but it's real. When a man lacks independence, when he needs her to feel okay about himself, he becomes less of a partner and more of a liability. Women aren't attracted to boys who need a mother. They're drawn to men who are full on their own, men who have their own goals, routines, and sources of fulfillment. That's not about being distant or cold. It's about being rooted. It's about having your own center of gravity so that you're not constantly orbiting hers. Attraction thrives in space, in the gaps, in the moments when she wonders what you're doing, where you are, what's going on in that mysterious world of yours that doesn't revolve around her. But if you're always available, always eager, always there with a good morning text and a miss you ping 5 times a day, you've killed the mystery. And with it, the tension. That tension is the electricity between masculine and feminine. Kill it, and everything goes flat. The Stoics were fiercely independent. Their sense of self wasn't shaped by other people's opinions or attention. It came from their principles, their work, their inner peace. They believed that true strength is self-contained and it radiates outward, not the other way around. That doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It means you cultivate depth. You focus on becoming the kind of man who brings value into every room simply because of the clarity and composure he carries. Women can sense the difference between a man who wants her and a man who needs her to feel whole. One is sexy. The other is suffocating. And here's the brutal truth. The moment she realizes you can't function without her presence, her energy, or her attention, she'll start to lose respect. Not because she's heartless, but because on an instinctive level, she's wired to be attracted to strength. Not control. Not clinginess. Strength. The most attractive men are the ones who know how to hold space, not fill it with noise. They know how to enjoy silence, how to get lost in their craft, how to have a full day without needing to broadcast it or seek approval. Their energy isn't scattered. It's centered. And that creates a magnetic pull that's far more powerful than any forced conversation or desperate attempt at connection. When you embody that, you stop chasing connection and start attracting it. You stop asking for permission to matter in her life. You simply matter because you matter to yourself first. And nothing is sexier to a woman than a man who isn't desperate for her time, her energy, or her validation. A man who says, "I care about you, but I don't need you to be whole," is a man who understands the Stoic balance between love and freedom. He doesn't smother. He invites. He doesn't demand. He inspires. And that's the kind of man she doesn't want to leave because he doesn't beg her to stay. Chapter 4. The no-purpose life revolves around her. A man without purpose is a man who becomes a shadow of whatever woman he's with. He morphs into her schedule, her needs, her moods. He abandons his passions, his structure, his direction. He convinces himself that this is love, that devotion means sacrifice. But the truth is far more brutal. What he thinks is romance is actually self-erasure. And every time he trades a piece of his identity to keep the connection, he kills the very attraction that brought her in. You see, women don't want to be your everything. That kind of emotional weight is crushing. It turns passion into pressure. It turns a relationship into a burden. And more importantly, it's not attractive. When your world revolves entirely around her, she stops seeing you as a man and starts seeing you as an echo, something that reflects her back to herself, but brings no contrast, no energy, no edge. There is no polarity without difference. No chemistry without tension. A woman can't lean into your strength if you've abandoned it to win her favor. Predictability might feel safe to you, but to her, it feels dead. Dependence isn't devotion, it's desperation in disguise. And desperation always repels. A woman wants to be part of your world, not the reason it exists. She wants to feel chosen, not clung to. If your entire sense of meaning lives in how much time she gives you, how she feels about you today, or whether she approves of your choices, you've lost the battle before it even began. Because no woman wants to mother her man. And if you turn your back on purpose, that's exactly what she'll feel like she's doing. A Stoic man doesn't need permission to live. He doesn't wait for the stars to align or for someone to motivate him. He wakes up with intention, not anxiety. He trains his body because discipline is sacred. He sharpens his mind because clarity is power. He builds a life that reflects his principles, not just his desires. And when he loves, he brings a full self to the table, not a hollow shell hoping to be filled. Purpose gives you posture. It gives you gravity. When you have something to serve, a mission, a craft, a vision of the man you're becoming, you walk differently. You don't hesitate. You don't ask for space. You create space because your time and energy have value. You speak with a weight that can't be faked. And women feel that. They feel the difference between a man who wants attention and a man who commands it without trying. Without purpose, you become reactive. You respond to her moods instead of standing firm in your own. You seek validation instead of living from values. You become a man who is always available, always accommodating, always agreeable, and slowly she stops looking at you the same way. Not because she's ungrateful, but because you stopped leading yourself. A man who forgets his purpose for a woman will eventually lose both. Because a woman cannot be your direction. She can walk beside you. She can inspire you. But she cannot be the path. That's your job. That's your burden. And if you don't carry it, she'll instinctively sense that you've placed your manhood in her hands. And that kind of energy doesn't feel romantic. It feels off. It feels wrong. And eventually, it makes her pull away, confused, frustrated, even guilty, because she didn't sign up to guide a man who refuses to guide himself. In Stoicism, purpose is not just about goals, it's about alignment. It's about integrity. It's about asking, am I moving towards something worthy, or am I shrinking myself to avoid discomfort? When you answer that question honestly, you begin to reclaim your life. You stop bending. You stop disappearing. You start living again, not just surviving in the orbit of someone else's story. And that shift? It's magnetic. A man who's building something, who's sculpting himself into something greater, doesn't chase. He attracts. Not by playing games, but by being real. Solid. Unshakable. A man who loves deeply but never forgets the mission. That's the man who holds a woman's attention, not for a moment, but for a lifetime. Chapter 5: Sloppy Appearance and Hygiene. Your physical presence is the first thing she notices. Before you speak a single word, before your character can even be understood, your appearance is already speaking for you. If that appearance is careless, if your clothes look slept in, your breath stinks, your nails are grimy, then you've already started the interaction from a position of weakness. Women don't expect you to look like a runway model, but they do expect you to look like a man who gives a damn. A man who takes pride in himself. A man who sees his body and image as part of his discipline, not an afterthought. Sloppiness is not harmless. It is not neutral. It's a red flag. It tells her you lack order. It tells her you don't value yourself enough to be ready for the world. And women instinctively recoil from that. Why? Because how you take care of yourself says everything about how you'll take care of her, how you'll manage stress, how you'll handle responsibility. Dirty fingernails aren't just dirty fingernails, they're a symbol of deeper neglect. The Stoics were not shallow. They weren't obsessed with image for the sake of vanity. But they understood one fundamental truth: your outer world reflects your inner discipline. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoics to ever live, wrote about the importance of cleanliness, structure, and readiness. He believed that even how you wash yourself matters. Why? Because how you do anything is how you do everything. If you cut corners in grooming, if you show up disheveled, you're likely cutting corners in more important places, like your goals, your mindset, your responsibilities. The modern world is filled with men who ignore this. They roll out of bed, toss on whatever shirt is closest, skip shaving, skip brushing, and step into the world like they're invisible. But you're not invisible. You are constantly being observed, evaluated, judged, especially by women. And not in a cruel way, but in a natural, instinctual way. Women are biologically tuned to read signals. They pay attention to the smallest details because those details reveal your mindset. She notices the way your shirt fits. She notices if your shoes are clean. She notices if your breath smells like mint or something that died in the back of your throat. And these things add up fast. You don't need expensive clothes. You need clean, well-fitting clothes. You don't need cologne that costs $300. You need to shower. You don't need to look like a fitness influencer. You just need to look like you take care of yourself. Like you understand that self-respect starts with how you carry yourself in the world. Women don't want a man who is perfect, they want a man who is intentional. Who walks with posture, not slouching. Who grooms his beard or shaves his neck. Who trims his nails, flosses his teeth, wears deodorant, and pays attention to the condition of his shoes. These things seem small, but they communicate something massive: that you are competent, that you are ready, that you are not living in chaos. Because attraction doesn't come from words. It comes from energy. And your appearance either tells the world I'm sharp, I'm focused, I'm in control, or I've given up and I hope nobody notices. And women will notice. Always. Because women are more intuitive than you think. They don't need to analyze you, your presence does that work for them. If a man shows up sloppy, it's not just unattractive, it's depressing. It tells her that he's not putting in effort. And if he's not putting effort into the first impression, into the foundation, what kind of effort will he bring to the harder stuff? To communication? To handling conflict? To growth? If you're lazy with the basics, she knows you'll be lazy with everything else. And here's the truth that most men don't want to hear: no amount of charm, wit, or intelligence can make up for neglect. You can have the best personality in the world, But if you look like you just crawled out of a dumpster, that personality will never get a chance to shine. You will be dismissed before your strengths are ever seen. Not because women are shallow, but because your appearance is telling them you're not serious. The Stoics lived with discipline in every aspect of their lives. Their homes were clean. Their clothes were simple but maintained. Their posture was upright. Their routines were structured. This wasn't about pride, it was about order. Inner clarity expressed through outer control. And when a woman sees that in a man, she feels it immediately. She doesn't have to guess who he is. His presence says it all. So clean your damn shoes. Wash your face. Cut your nails. Wear clothes that fit. Carry yourself like you're worth something. Because you are. And because when you do, you walk into every room with quiet power. You don't have to speak loudly or act tough. Your appearance already told them you're a man who leads himself. The worst mistake men make is thinking that grooming and hygiene are optional. They're not. They are required. They are the price of entry. They are the minimum bar for being taken seriously. And if you want women to see your depth, your humor, your strength, then you have to clear that bar first. In the end, it's simple. The man who respects himself takes care of himself. And the man who takes care of himself commands the attention of others without begging for it, without performing, without trying. That's the Stoic way. That's masculine order. That's what makes her lean in. Chapter 6. Weak boundaries. A man without boundaries is a man who becomes a doormat. He says yes when he means no. He smiles when he's angry. He tolerates disrespect to avoid conflict. He keeps silent when he should speak. And worst of all, he convinces himself that this makes him a good guy. But in reality, it just makes him forgettable. Forgettable to other men. Forgettable to himself. And worst of all, forgettable to women. Every time a man betrays himself to keep the peace, to be liked, to avoid tension, he chips away at his masculine core. And women feel that. Even if they can't explain it in words, they can sense it in his body language, in his voice, in the way his eyes hesitate when they should be certain. Weak boundaries kill respect. And when respect dies, attraction isn't far behind. A woman may not tell you directly that she's losing interest. She may even say she appreciates your kindness or your flexibility. But inside, she's disconnecting. Because she doesn't feel your strength. And without strength, there's nothing to anchor her to you. Boundaries are not barriers to love, they're the container for it. They're not about pushing people away. They're about showing them where your values begin and end. Boundaries are definitions. They tell the world what you accept, what you reject, and who you are at your core. They say, this is who I am, and this is how I live. When you enforce boundaries with calmness and strength, not rage, not arrogance, but solid conviction, you create a certain kind of tension. And tension is where attraction lives. It's in that space where a woman realizes you're not a puppet. That you won't just go along with anything to keep her around. That she has to show up with integrity too. Because you won't tolerate less. A man who stands up for himself without being reactive or emotional is a man who commands the room. He doesn't bark. He doesn't flinch. He simply holds his ground. And that stillness is more powerful than any display of bravado. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it to you. But I also won't bend for you. That kind of presence changes how people treat you. It changes how women look at you. The Stoics were masters of internal boundaries. They trained themselves to separate what was within their control from what wasn't. They said, "This is mine to govern, my thoughts, my reactions, my choices. Everything else is external." And in that clarity, they found strength. Not loud strength. Quiet strength. The kind that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't crumble when tested. When you know your limits, you become unshakable. You stop negotiating your dignity. You stop seeking validation for your values. You become the kind of man who walks away when respect is no longer on the table, not out of pride, but out of principle. And that principle becomes your compass in every relationship. Women don't want men who explode over every little thing, but they also don't want men who tolerate everything just to avoid discomfort. What they truly crave is a man who knows his boundaries and honors them, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. That's when your real character is revealed. Because here's the thing, every woman will test your boundaries at some point. Not maliciously, but instinctively. She needs to know what kind of man she's dealing with. Can you be pushed? Will you fold under pressure? Or will you stay rooted in who you are? If you let things slide that matter to you, if you pretend something's okay when it's not, she might smile and move on. But something inside her will shift. And you won't even notice it until it's too late. Strong boundaries aren't about controlling her. They're about controlling yourself. They're about protecting your peace, your time, your energy. They're about showing the world that you value yourself enough to say no. And that no carries weight. It's not petty. It's powerful. If you're always saying yes to keep her around, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. And performances always end. Sooner or later, the mask slips. The resentment builds. And she leaves, not because you were too nice, but because you were never real with her. And deep down, she knew it. So stop apologizing for your standards. Stop letting fear of rejection make your choices for you. Speak up when something feels wrong. Walk away when your worth isn't seen. Let your silence say what your words don't need to. The man who lived by his boundaries is the man who doesn't need to chase. He becomes the man women chase because his energy demands it. Remember this, boundaries are not limitations. They are declarations. They tell the world you're not here to be used, manipulated, or shaped into someone else's fantasy. You're here to live with honor. And that alone makes you rare. Chapter 7, Seeking Approval to People-Pleasing. There is nothing more unattractive than a man who constantly adjusts himself to win approval. Whether it's from a woman, his friends, his boss, or the faceless crowd on social media, a man who bends his values to be liked is a man who can never truly be respected. And without respect, there is no real attraction. Women don't want a man who agrees with everything. They want a man who believes in something. Something real. Something that doesn't change based on who's watching. The disease of people-pleasing goes deeper than most men realize. On the surface, it can look like kindness, politeness, flexibility. But under the surface, it's manipulation dressed up as goodness. You're not being nice because it's right. You're being nice because you want something back, approval, validation, praise, love. That's not virtue. That's fear. And women can smell it. People-pleasing is not kindness. It's control. You're trying to engineer a reaction by suppressing your truth, walking on eggshells, and packaging yourself into whatever you think she wants. But here's the harsh truth. Attraction isn't something you can negotiate. It's either there or it isn't. And the moment a woman senses that you need her approval to feel okay, she starts to disconnect. Not because she's cruel, but because neediness feels fake. And fake never lasts. A woman doesn't want to carry the weight of your self-worth. That's your job. When your confidence depends on her reactions, when your opinions shift to avoid conflict, when you say what you think she wants to hear instead of what you really mean, you're not being noble. You're being dishonest. And dishonesty is repulsive, even if it's soft-spoken. Stoic men knew this. They didn't shape themselves to fit in. They didn't adjust their principles based on trends. They didn't twist their personalities to win favors. The Stoics didn't chase applause or avoid criticism. They chased virtue. They sought to be aligned with reason, with truth, with integrity. And they measured themselves by their own internal standards, not by whether the crowd cheered or booed. That is real masculinity. You see, when a man is grounded in himself, when he does what he believes is right whether or not it's popular, he becomes dangerous in the best possible way. He's untouchable. He can't be bribed with compliments or manipulated with rejection. He walks his path, and if others want to join him, great. If not, he keeps walking. That kind of man doesn't need to advertise his worth. It shows in how he speaks, in what he tolerates, in what he refuses to fake. Women notice that. Deeply. They feel it. Because in a world full of men trying to impress, a man who doesn't need to be liked stands out. He creates gravity. He commands attention not by demanding it, but by not needing it at all. He's free. And freedom is attractive as hell. If you're constantly seeking approval, you will never find peace, and you will never keep her attraction. Because you're showing her that you're unstable, that you don't trust yourself, that your identity depends on her opinion. And that pressure becomes exhausting. Women are not looking for perfection. They're looking for truth, authenticity, solidity. And when you abandon who you are to win her over, you're doing the exact opposite of what works. You're not leading. You're chasing. And the second you chase her approval, she runs in the opposite direction. So stop bending. Stop trying to be everything to everyone. Have an opinion. Say no. Hold your frame. Risk being disliked if it means being real. Because no woman worth having wants a man who can't stand his ground. She may tolerate him. She may use him. But she will never truly admire him. A man must choose between being liked and being respected. The Stoics knew which one mattered. And so should you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And that's exactly the point. Attraction isn't about tricks, manipulation, or trying to become someone you're not. It's about removing what's weak, unstable, and unattractive from your life. It's about stepping into the role of a grounded, purposeful, self-controlled man, not just for women, but for yourself. If any of these 7 behaviors resonated with you, don't shame yourself. Don't spiral into guilt. That's not what a Stoic would do. Recognize it. Own it. And then remove it like poison from your system. Because every day, you're either becoming more attractive or less. You're either gaining strength or leaking it. There's no standing still. Women are naturally drawn to men who lead themselves. Men who don't apologize for their standards. Men who can be vulnerable without falling apart. Who can be loving without losing themselves. That's the kind of man you want to become, not just to attract women, but to conquer life. So now it's your move. Drop the dead weight. Stand taller. Speak less. Do more. Let your presence, not your words, define you. If you found value in this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share your story in the comments, and send this to a man who needs to hear it. Remember, it's not about changing for women. It's about becoming unshakable for yourself. See you in the next one. Stay disciplined. Stay grounded. Stay stoic.